Dana Schwartz, and this is Rise or Die, the official companion podcast for Peacock's original series, Those About to Die. On this podcast, I go behind the scenes with the show's cast and creators to learn how they brought their brutal vision of Rome to life.
Gosh, people will freak out.
Rise or Die launches on July 18th. Watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, I'm Alison Larkin, writer, comedian, narrator, and host of the Jane Austen podcast. Join me as we embark on a journey through Austen's timeless stories, starting with Pride and Prejudice. The Jane Austen podcast with Alison Larkin is available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to Angel on Top. Just a brief announcement before we get into belonging.
A reminder that we're opening our Patreon-only community to our Black and Indigenous listeners at no cost to increase the perspectives in those spaces and help bring in more listeners who are living with economic disparities in their day-to-day lives.
If you are a Black or Indigenous listener and would like access to our Patreon community spaces, ad-free episodes, advanced MP3s, and other digital items offered to patrons, you can go to www.bufferingthevampireslayer.com/justkeepfighting. and enter your email. From there, you'll be provided with a password that you'll use for access. Welcome back to Angel on Top, a podcast where we watch and discuss every episode of Angel one by one, spoiler-free, and in tandem with Buffering the Vampire Slayer. I'm Laura Zach.
And I'm Brittany Ashley. And this week we're watching Belonging. Stick around until the end for an original poem written by us through the perspective of Angel.
Belonging was written by Sean Ryan and directed by Turi Meyer. It aired on May 1st, 2001.
Turi Meyer, that's a name I haven't heard yet.
Yeah, first timer, Turi Meyer.
This is the one where a magic portal from another world brings a nasty demon and the host's cousin to Los Angeles.
They call Lorne the host on IMDb?
Yeah, because he isn't known as Lorne until this episode.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, remember when LaToya schooled us and told us that?
I do now. It's all coming back. Yeah. It's all coming back to me now. It's also the one where we learn how badly we need more women directors. What a nap, what a nap.
What a mighty strange app.
Mighty, mighty strange app.
Well, I will say the teaser is quite fun. I did have to replay it twice to understand what was happening. Because the first time around, I was like, oh, why is this empty chair here? And why do we hear Angel's voice? And then when we realize we're looking through a mirror and that's why there's an empty chair prominently placed, then we reverse, see Angel's there, but we obviously can't see his reflection. And that's why they're sitting in the back of the restaurant, is because Angel's nervous that people will catch on to the fact that there's a vamp in the house. But Cordelia is mad that she wants to be in the more prominently displayed part of the restaurant so that she could see celebrities, because that is still a characteristic of her every now and again.
And they're celebrating that Cordelia just booked a national commercial, which for those of you not in LA, this is a fairly big deal because those big commercials pay pretty well. And then you get lots of residuals. Not that I would know, but I have a friend who's been in a McDonald's commercial, okay? Not to brag. And an Amazon Prime commercial.
Oh, yeah. My old roommate, he was in a Chevy commercial, I want to say. And he made like $80,000.
Yeah, it's insane. And then you keep getting checks for as long as the commercial runs. So Cordelia is sitting pretty and her friends are celebrating her. And correct me if you recall differently, but I believe this is the first time that we've ever seen them all like out to dinner together. Especially a fancy dinner. And it felt so jarring. It felt almost like a different show for a second.
Totally. It kind of reminded me of when Angel, Cordelia, and Wesley would go to like these Hollywood parties, like for a couple episodes. That's kind of what it reminded me of, because we haven't seen them actually unwind in a long time. Like, obviously the Darla thing was such a huge hit to them, and then Angel being Angle and being kind of in jealousy. There's never a time that they were able to actually unwind, and I think this is the first time that the four of them, including Gunn, have been able to ever do some like sort of team bonding that wasn't killing something.
And they're bonding over something that has nothing to do with their normal work. And Angel is being a little bit cheap about, because he's treating Cordelia, and this is like, come on with this social etiquette where you're like taking someone out and then complaining about how expensive things are when you have to pay. No, honey. But he slips back into his terrible Irish accent because he's basically saying, I'm not cheap, I'm just old.
I feel like the writers maybe have dropped the game of every now and again, there'll be like a back in my day type thing that they forget has so much comedy in it. Like, obviously last episode when Angel is like surveying Lindsay's truck from the 1950s, he kind of like drops into it again, but it's really a stone that hasn't been unturned enough, in my opinion.
This season of Angel, except for when he was Angle, you've seen like his kind of bumbling, playful side, and especially post Angle, like him kind of coming back to himself and coming back to the team. I'd be curious if like an exclusively Buffy watcher tuned in to this episode for the first time, or even this scene. I feel like they'd be experiencing a totally different Angel. Like,
true.
I don't know that this kind of like bumbling, like, okay, boomer version of Angel like really existed in Buffy.
No, God, no. Like, I am trying to think, because I know the first 3 seasons encyclopedically well. And
no,
I really
he's just
can't.
like broody, and it's not that they were without incorporating humor into his character at all, but they just really, cranked that up once he went to LA.
Yeah, and also I think the like status that he's in within the group, where he's trying to like work back to get their affections and get their respect. I think he is submitting himself a little bit and is just more open to being playful because he doesn't have to put on this front of being the boss all the time. So I think that maybe has something to do with it as well.
Yeah, like when Gunn and Wesley start talking about this demon that they're going to kill later that Cordelia saw in one of her visions, they like fist bump, and then Angel kind of like tentatively, like a little boy, puts his fist out like, me too, guys.
Yeah, he's like, slap a hand.
And then he jumps up and accosts a woman who's wearing a red scarf and says that he knows it's made of the skin of dead children, and that he would recognize this certain type of witch anywhere. And then Cordelia intervenes and very diplomatically talks the woman down and is like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is actually a very expensive scarf. I didn't really understand story-wise what this beat was serving, except for maybe to further show that Angel's kind of out of his element. And of course, we'll see thematically in this episode that this is happening to a degree for all of the characters, feeling really out of place and feeling, one might say a lack of belonging.
Yeah, I think similarly with the following scene with Wes talking to his dad, it's like these scenes that don't really play out fully within the episode, but it's maybe just like a larger part of their character that develops.
Basically, Cordelia is a little bit embarrassed by Angel making a scene and sits back down and is like, okay, let's not draw more attention to ourselves. But then she gets sick from the sashimi, which, I mean, someone needs to talk to that restaurant, because if you're going to be at like a 5-star restaurant in LA and they can't even deliver on clean sashish, what?
I believe it'd be sashimi.
Clean sashimi, that's way better.
Yeah, I felt like it was just a fun way to be like, we can't take these poor crazy kids anywhere. It kind of felt like a teaser to a sitcom as well. Like that's what I was getting from this. Feels like a different show. It's like, he's a vampire. She gets visions. Another one's a dork and the other one's cool. Did you notice in the dinner scene that Angel was looking at Cordelia a lot?
No.
Well,
what might that mean?
I just want to set that down.
Well,
set that down on the table and walk away.
You know what? I'm not gonna pick it up just yet, but I'm gonna look at what you set down. I might even like tuck a little bit of a mint leaf on one side. I might scooch a little candle up to it and create a still life with what you sat down, and then I might paint it. And then I might take that painting and hang it somewhere prominent in my room so that when I wake up, it's one of the first things I see.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Okay, so then we get the opening credits and we have a scene that I have got to give it to Alexis Denisov for this scene, because to have to do an entire emotional scene where it's basically talking to a daddy who doesn't approve of you, but it's all on the phone. And so the acting is entirely one-sided and you have to go through this entire progression of like, I'm excited to talk to my dad and I'm proud to tell him this thing about getting a promotion at the group I work for, which I think he called it, and then go from that high to, oh, now he's making me feel like shit and he's reminding me of past failures and he believes that this one's going to be a failure too and now I feel terrible. Like all of that just talking into a phone, that's an impressive feat of acting.
Totally. And I think that his need to impress his dad, there's a parallel there with Angel when he was Liam, how he was constantly not impressing his father and how his father always looked down on him and thought that he was a total waste. I think that there's parallels there, that if they really got into it, they would see that they are more alike than they realize. But I think that they're too caught in the dynamic of Wes seeing Angel as daddy. And that's why Wes is constantly trying to impress Angel. I don't know. It just like further shows us that so much of how we move through the world and how much we interact with others and the dynamics that we fall into is very much based on our parental trauma, which I know nothing about.
Our family of origin. Yeah, we may no longer have Kate, but a daddy theme is universal in this show. And
completely.
It reminded me of, are you caught up on Succession?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, regardless, there's the incredible comedian Demi DeJuibe, who produces the podcast Gilmore Guys and is a writer on The Good Place, who made a lyric video for the Succession theme song where he was like adding words to the music, and the words were all, who will get a kiss from daddy? I'm butchering. Who will daddy kiss? Who will daddy kiss? And it reminded me of this moment. And also it reminded me, I'm listening on audiobook right now to this incredible / terrifying book called Hiding in Plain Sight by Sarah Kendzior. Do you follow her on Twitter?
I don't.
She's this incredible journalist and now author. This is her second book. And she, her expertise had been on autocracies. Her like area of focus in her studies was on Uzbekistan. And so she, like a year before 2016, had predicted exactly what was going to happen with Trump's election. And at the time, everyone thought she was really alarmist and didn't like take her seriously. And then after the fact, this big New Yorker piece was published on her, calling her she lives in Missouri. So the title of the piece was A Cassandra in Trumpland. And basically she was seen now as like prescient for being able to know that this was coming. And so she just came out with a new book that just kind of tracks Trump's involvement in like a transnational crime syndicate, basically, that's trying to take over like countries essentially. And it's really scary. And it really, like right now I'm in the section in the 90s that's talking about Epstein and talking about Trump's affiliation with him. But one of the things you talked about in the part I just read is like about how so much of Trump's thing was about like getting the
His dad's approval.
His daddy. Thanks for dissolving our democracy, daddy.
Totally. Yeah, and The Mask You Live In gets into that as well, that documentary that I love so very much. There's a lot of talk about the roles that these boys and men, their relationship with their father, and how that played into their own toxic masculinity.
Yeah, and of course there's like intersections with a lot, like, of course, the white supremacist underpinnings, and but I really do recommend this book. It's not necessarily the most hopeful piece of journalism, but it feels very important and very like clear-eyed.
Full hearts can't lose.
Angel visits Cordelia on set, and what is up with this scene? I think I know it's going to serve what's coming later, but what I couldn't help but think about in watching this scene of a super on-the-nose, horrifically misogynistic male director, the one thing that I thought of this entire scene was Joss. Like, I think there's something when a writer-director is choosing to show like a scene or something about a set, I feel like there's something very like revealing about the type of set they're showing. And obviously this is going to be a scene of a set that I assume Joss would think is extremely distant from the one that he had created. Now let's get into
it. So in a fun misdirect where we think that Angel is going to talk to this actress on set who is his type, blonde, he's actually drawn to the lighting setup on a beach backdrop, and he closes his eyes and he lets the sun hit his face, and it just reminded me of I Will Remember You, where he went to the beach, the Santa Monica Pier, it looked like, which also, if that's your first stop, my condolences. But just a reminder of what he loses out on by being a vampire, the sun and nature and these things that I think perhaps pre-COVID, a lot of us took for granted, of how good it feels to just be outside and be in the sun. And I have a total new appreciation for nature after this, for sure.
Yeah, big vitamin D energy.
Big vitamin D energy.
I wish you could see the face I made right after saying that. It was truly like a preemptive cringe. Like, oh, I tried it.
Take it back. Yeah.
My face was truly, well, I tried it.
Check out our new pin, Big Vitamin D Energy, in the Angel on Top store.
Is that how you think I sound? Like, wow. If you could kind of sum up this scene in one jingle, it would be the patriarchy. The reason I brought up Joss is because I feel like the sexism in this scene is so extreme in its expression that I almost think that it kind of like undermines the like microaggressions that were probably more prevalent on his own set, that of course like actors, especially the actresses who have been on these shows have retroactively spoken to and spoken. Joss has faced a lot of backlash with his own personal history and how he's been on set, and of course Charisma Carpenter has talked about the women characters of Angel and being underserved. But it is interesting that like how extreme this feels. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's like
there's something that almost like, it's something that almost like separates the filmmaker from it. It's like, oh, I'm not this way because this is what it looks like for someone to be problematic on set, and I'm the opposite of this.
Yeah, it's like trying to display like the overt wrongness when we'll see in like 2 seasons, like a super heinous, like behind the scenes thing that he did to Charisma Carpenter, which you could argue
without any spoilers. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like I totally agree with you. Like this is his way to like give a nod to I'm one of the good ones. Like I don't do this.
Even sooner than 2 seasons from now, I think even within this episode, like that moment that's coming later where Gunn, Wesley, and Angel all like have a moment of like the throwaway objectifying Cordelia. And it's just like, why? And I feel like that is more what the men who are making this show are aligning with. The like,
totally.
Hey, look, we're still sexual beings. We're definitely going to objectify the woman who works with us, who is we consider our family. But you know, we're not like talking about her tits directly.
Yeah, like she's never, regardless of how much she has proven to all of them that she is not just a sexual object, she will still always be seen that way because she is the woman that works with them and she is the woman in the room. And yeah, that was a very disappointing scene for sure.
Back on the set, the director's, asks or demands that Cordelia take off her robe. She's wearing a very revealing bikini, which was jarring actually to see because I don't think we've ever seen Cordelia dressed like that before. No. Which is, I don't want to like say it's a testament to the show because it's not like, oh, you get praise for not like having your women characters.
No, but like
exposed.
Nudity never plays like a like objectifying nudity is never something that plays a role in these worlds.
Yeah, I think that as a universal claim might not be true. I'm sure, I feel like there have definitely been big bads or storylines that have had their share of sexualization of the characters, but that isn't inherently misogynistic. I do think that, what Joss is showing, and again, I know he didn't write this episode, but what this episode is showing is, again, a very overt, extreme version of what was definitely happening in a much more covert way.
Mm-hmm.
He's having her spin for him. And again, all of this, even though it's extreme, this is realistic. Like this is absolutely what directors have done and not as bad as what real directors have done to women on sets. But, making her spin, telling her she looks like shit, saying she needs to go back into hair and makeup, saying that he doesn't want to fuck her basically. And Angel steps in and is like, you're out of line, and basically challenges this guy. Cordelia almost loses the gig because of that, and then gets pissed at Angel, rightfully so. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that. Like, of course, I understand why he would stand up for her, but it also felt a little bit patronizing to like speak for her in that moment.
Yeah, well, I think that she maybe saw it through the like, I think from the audience perspective, you could be like, fuck yeah, that was patronizing. But I think that like her anger is coming from a place of you're going to lose me this gig and you're just supposed to like take it. You're supposed to accept these conditions, which obviously we can see is not like the best take to have on it, but it's more of like a problem within the industry, like more of a systemic problem that she's not going to be able to solve in this moment. So it's more just like questioning. And that I think it is the question that she ends up having with herself in this episode is like, do I want to be pursuing a dream where this is a type of behavior that I'm going to have to accept?
Yeah. And the only reason that Angel is there is to ask a question that feels to me that could have waited. Like it's a question about the demon that they're hunting, and specifically if it's liver eating or not. Like it felt like kind of an arbitrary question about her vision that, it does suck that he interrupted her in this like one shoot that she's booked in literal years.
Yeah, totally. So do you want to hear a fact that is not so fun, but it's interesting?
Yes, please.
So obviously we never see Charisma Carpenter in this much of like a revealing outfit. But apparently you can see a scar on her belly, and it's because when she was a kid, she fell into a swimming pool that was under construction at her home and fell into a piece of rebar. And I don't know if you remember,
What?
but in a Buffy episode, the character of Cordelia falls on a piece of rebar and lands herself in the hospital.
Do you think that that's why they chose that to be Cordelia's character's injury in Buffy, because she already had a scar there?
Who can say?
Someone can.
Charisma.
That is an interesting fact, though not fun, because I'm sorry for young Charisma.
I know. So Rondell and George from, as you remember from the episode of Thin Deadline, show up to ask Gunn for help. They're saying that a bunch of vamps are feeding on unhoused people. And as at Mackenzie Park, which I'm assuming is a proxy for MacArthur Park. And as we know from just in general, how unhoused people are treated and how they're generally the most vulnerable and nobody's looking out for them, vamps feeding on them is likely for them to just get by completely unscathed. So Rondell, George, and Gunn and the rest of their crew are probably the only chance that these people have at staying alive, because they're the only ones who are going to look out for them. And so Gunn thinks that they're asking him for help, but they actually just want to borrow his truck. So this is definitely a barometer of like how far away Gunn has fallen from the people that he used to be friends with and used to fight against vampires with and demons with. And he's very much torn between kind of like his two worlds of helping the like truly the most vulnerable populations, or, you know, tracking down a demon that is likely attacking a white blonde woman.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's definitely falling on race lines as well, that his group that he had been fighting alongside were mostly Black people and people of color, whereas now he's working in this organization with 3 white people. And again, I can't help but like every time there's a scene with like Rondell and George or anyone else that Gunn knows from his like previous iteration of his work, like thinking of the point that was made on the episode with LaToya, Ira, and Alana about race in the Angelverse and Buffyverse, where they were talking about how Angel had literally no Black writers at any point in their writer's room, which really just adds like an extra element of cringe to watching these scenes with multiple Black characters, especially talking about like fighting on the streets and whatnot, like when you know that they were completely written by white people and most likely white men.
Yeah, totally. And I think that they're all great actors. And so I think that they do the best they can to make these words sound believable. But yeah, it just always comes off as inauthentic, knowing where the words were coming from.
But for Gunn, basically thematically, like tapping into the larger story of the episode and the theme of belonging, for him, it is kind of being in this place of feeling like there's a deepening distance between him and like his close friends that he came up with and like started his work of fighting demons and vampires alongside. And I think there's you know, maybe insinuating that a crisis of identity is coming up of like where he belongs and where he feels like he can do his best work and where he's most needed.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's probably also some level of like, he's obviously like getting paid now from the work with Angel Investigations, whereas he obviously wasn't getting paid for his work before. And so it's like you're making money and you are still doing work in this area, but it just, the impact that it has just means something totally different. And I think that if Gunn was like, hey, Angel, Wes, and Cordelia, let's save these unhoused people from getting killed by vampires, I don't think that they would actually do that, because Cordelia would be like, well, where's the money in that? Angel would be like, yeah, I don't know. I think we need to like track down this demon. And maybe Wes is the only one who would do it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I do wish that there was more collaboration between the groups. Like once Gunn came on full time, like I wish they played up more of an alliance between the two groups, or even in this episode, as we'll see with what tragically happens later, that Gunn feels so separate. And like Gunn is supposedly their teammate, like someone they're really close to as a friend, and even deeper than a friend. They've saved each other's lives multiple times. And yet Cordelia, Wes, and Angel are completely oblivious, while Gunn is having like a really deep emotional crisis and trauma. And in like the community he's surrounded with is his community, whereas the people that he's been working with now are just kind of off doing their own thing and aren't even aware that he's just suffered this massive loss.
Totally.
So I just wish that story-wise and in the world of the show, there had been more of like an integration and alliance where like Angel Investigations were helping Gunn's community more than they do. I mean, there's of course, you know, like the episode that they alluded to with Rondell and George before, where Wesley got shot when they were going after the zombie cops. Like they have definitely shown a little bit of it, but like you said, that doesn't seem to be the priority of Angel Investigations, because ultimately capitalism.
Totally.
Ultimately, they're trying to make money, or at least Cordelia is.
Yeah. But like her trauma is also in losing her identity in high school, because she used to have money and then she had absolutely none of it. And so now she similarly is trying to make up for where her dad failed her, which is, her dad failed her, but also like capitalism failed their entire family, where she is now, the way that she feels safe and the way that she feels her identity is having money. So that is what will prevent her from taking jobs that give her no money. So she's just like very blinded by this like internal capitalism inside of her.
Right. It's that catch-22 that I think that like Parasite kind of shows, of how like even when you're aware of how capitalism has harmed you or your family, you can't help in some ways but like continue to buy into the system in order to transcend it. It like keeps you stuck in this loop.
Totally.
Where you can be aware of like how it has brought evil to you and yet still try to use it to get out of evil.
Totally.
So then there's a scene I do not like where Angel tells Gunn and Wesley what he has just witnessed with Cordelia at the commercial shoot. And there's a lot going on here. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and walk over to the painting that is hanging prominently near my bed of what you put down earlier, the still life of what you put down. And I'm going to pick it up and kind of tilt it a little, because there's something about this scene that's reminding me of that still life. And it's because Angel seems very, what would the word be? Frazzled, talking about Cordelia being treated this way by the director. And it's clear that there's some sort of energy behind his anger that's not just about him like feeling protective on behalf of his friend. Like there seems to be like, oh, how dare he, you know, objectifying her, and you know, like, and it was kind of gross because the way he framed it initially was kind of blaming Cordelia. It was sort of like, why would she be such an idiot to want to be an actor when this is how the culture is? It's like blaming her for participating in the industry rather than like looking at the sources of the toxicity.
Totally.
But, you know, then he's kind of talking about like, she was just wearing this flimsy swimsuit that was covering nothing. And then all three of the men just kind of become silent, and they're clearly all exploring their imagination of what that might look like and getting tongue-tied around it.
Hate it.
And you know what? That's where Joss popped out. The Joss leapt out. It's like, okay,
Absolutely.
buddy, this is what you are interpreting as acceptable. while you're distancing yourself from the shitty misogynist director.
Yeah, totally. Like, no matter how much she's proven herself to be an equal and maybe even beyond equal, given the fact that she has the visions that completely guide their business, she is still going to be seen as lesser than because she's objectified.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason moments like this stand up in these specific shows, is because in the love stories we've seen, well, I'm mostly thinking of Buffy right now, but I'm thinking of Buffy and Angel, for example. Like, yes, it's really weird that he initially became interested in Buffy, seeing her as like a 15-year-old girl and being like, ooh, I'm intrigued. But they never explicitly framed that as him sexually objectifying her in those moments. And it did feel like they always kind of presented Angel and Buffy's love story as being more about like a deeper soul connection than it was about him ever like super being gross about her body, or, you know, and of course he was attracted to her, but like that's never what they led with. And same with other couples on the show. Like it never really is led with something more leery, but there's something about this that is that way. And so it's confusing because we don't often see that unless it's like a momentary joke. Like, remember when like Lorne was talking about Cordelia being hot, or like characters that are meant to be villains being kind of gross and pervy, but we aren't used to like our main protagonist being that way. Totally.
Yeah. And like, it feels like a Jossie thing of like trying to set apart that like these guys are different because they objectify Cordelia, but they're all going to agree not to talk about it.
Yeah. They're not going to let her know that they're talking about that behind her back.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dana Schwartz, and this is Rise or Die, the official companion podcast for Peacock's original series, Those About to Die. On this podcast, I go behind the scenes with the show's cast and creators to learn how they brought their brutal vision of Rome to life. I talked to acclaimed director and executive producer Roland Emmerich.
When I saw the first race, I was like giddy.
Actor Ewan Ryan.
For an actor, that's a dream, although you do get a lot of sand in your sandals.
And so many more.
You helped summon those ghosts back onto that stage.
Every day when I went to set, I was giggling about like what I saw.
I think it's going to be a breathtaking thing.
People will freak out.
Rise or Die launches on July 18th. Watch or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Finding a new podcast to listen to is easy. Finding a good new podcast, that's a little tougher. So let me recommend one. It's called Something You Should Know. If you like fascinating information you can use in your life from some of the top experts in the world, you're going to like Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and recently we've covered topics like the benefits of laughing, the science of dreaming, where your deep desires come from, even how to make the perfect burger. We produce 3 episodes a week, and each episode is packed with rock-solid intel that will make your life better. And we have a lot of fun doing it. Something You Should Know has been ranked on the Apple Podcast charts every day for over 7 years. A lot of people like this podcast, and you will too. Listen to Something You Should Know wherever you get your podcasts. Look for the bright yellow light bulb on the blue background. It's Something You Should Know.
And then we cut to a palate cleanser of sorts, which is
Thank God.
Absolutely belting out Stevie Wonder at the karaoke bar.
Putting out the vibe. But his vibe is just so strong that we see a portal behind him opening up on stage, and we see this like bull-like demon snarling out. And this demon is a menace, just completely terrorizing our sweet, safe karaoke bar.
Usually we're used to Lorne having the answers, right? But it's clear from the beginning that there's something that has shaken Lorne about this particular appearance of this demon. Then we cut back to Cordelia in the middle of the commercial, and it's even grosser than we could have imagined.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically she and this other bikini-clad woman massaging a guy on the beach, and it's a sunscreen commercial. And the director yells cut and basically tells her to like lean down more, aka show more cleavage. And yeah, she's just continuing to get like absolutely disrespected and objectified.
Ugh. Yeah, I just wrote truly grotesque and moved on.
We can do that too. So Wes and Angel come back from killing the demon that they've been alluding to for the rest of the episode to find a depressed Cordelia. And at first she's pissed at Angel about being out of line for confronting the director, but then ultimately she's just upset with herself for having put herself in that situation, which again isn't entirely fair because she's participating in a system that's stacked against her.
The heartbreaking part was her saying, I just wanted to act, that's all. And I think that is the most painful part of being a creative, that all you want to do is act or write or direct, but there's always like these power hungry egomaniacs who can ruin this vulnerable environment. And so the act of this creative, passionate, vulnerable, emotional thing that you want to do ends up getting ruined. And I think that she sums it up pretty well by saying, this town sucks. This makes sense why her seeing that she is obviously much more valuable in a different arena makes a lot of sense, but it does suck that she's like, all I wanted to do was act, because she is giving up the thing that she loves most. But we also have to question, you know, did she want to get into acting in the first place because she wanted to be famous, you know, because she wanted this like high status, which is what she's always been really interested in? Or did she actually love acting?
Mm-hmm. And Lorne shows up to find Wesley, Angel, and Cordelia, and is just, and again, we've never, I don't believe, seen Lorne seek out this crew for help of his own, and he's basically just like, yeah, anyway, this thing happened. It's not in your books. You definitely have never heard of this universe that it's from, but you definitely need to kill it.
Yeah.
And also it's getting pretty hungry. And he's describing what is called it Draken?
The Draken.
Which is this really hideous kind of pig-looking demon.
And the Draken is jacked.
And the Draken is very violent. I would say it's one of the more gruesome killers that we've seen on the show, at least in terms of like the gore and the way they convey the killing. Like it cuts to the Draken killing a club goer, and you see the murder happen in a shadow, and you see the Draken just chomping down on a whole arm.
Yeah, it's very beast-like in a way that we don't really see super often.
Wow, the way you talk about the Draken, I think I know who your fuckwatch pick is.
Wrong. You have no idea. I'm going the exact opposite direction. But Angel, when they're trying to figure out a plan to kill the Draken, Angel assumes the role of leader until Cordelia is like, hey, dude, remember that Wes is the leader now. And obviously, having seen Wes be belittled by his dad on the phone, or, you know, feel the effects of that, we see that it just hits Wes a little differently. And he's probably thrown off and feeling like his dad is maybe right about him, which is sad.
And then Cordelia has another vision, or the first vision of this episode that we've seen. And it's of a woman in a library reading from an old book, and then a portal opening, not unlike the one that we saw happen with Lorne.
Yeah. And yeah, through this episode, we see that something is going on with Lorne. Like there's something that he's not really telling us. So then Gunn is meeting up with some dude named Junior. But when Gunn enters, there is a line of his old friends, and he doesn't really understand what's going on. And then he sees that George was killed by a vampire.
And they don't know if he's going to turn yet. And, you know, obviously we understand very quickly that Gunn, being who he is, and also the fact that George had just come to him before his death, feels the weight of the responsibility and feels like this wouldn't have happened had he been there.
Yeah. And also, I mean, obviously his sister was killed by a vampire and he had to work through so much to even work with a vampire angel. I think there is also probably some like, there's a lot of conflict of like, I'm working with these people who could have prevented this and someone that I love was just killed.
Another person I love.
Yeah. Oh, and also, okay, so this is a fun fact, but the actor who plays George, he was also Ray on The Secret World of Alex Mack. Ray was Alex's best friend and next door neighbor.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cool. That is fun.
That's
wow,
so
you
fun.
really are accurate with your fun versus interesting designation.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but does Lorne ask Angel on a date to an Elton John concert?
That's how I chose to take it.
He's got a broody stare and hot spiky hair. If you're straight or gay, your tingly feelings don't care. You're just being honest about this sexy demonic in your Bye for Boreanaz. Bye for Boreanaz. Bye for Boreanaz.
Team arrives at the library, and this is what I mean. From here on out, the rest of the episode, Gunn's storyline is fully distinct, and there's one moment of them of Angel Investigations trying to reach him and being unable to. But again, it's you know, this thing where Gunn is very in his own solitude, in his grieving, whereas I feel like historically in this show, when one character, with the exception of when Angel had become Angel and was fully, you know, separate from his former friends, whenever one character is going through a private grief, usually at some point someone from their team is going to like figure it out and be there to support them. And in this, at least in this episode, that doesn't happen. And it does feel, again, like there's some racial element behind that like where Gunn comes from in his community, Angel and Cordelia and Wesley do kind of still see as separate from and don't necessarily see as part of their work, which they should be viewing it as. These are like still residents of Los Angeles who they're supposedly sworn to protect.
Yeah, they don't see helping them as a priority or working with them as an option, which in of itself is totally a racist thing.
And, you know, instead they're like, let's just go try to find what pretty white girl vanished from this library.
Yeah.
And so they're at the library and there is a librarian that there's this funny moment where she's like terrified by Lorne. And then Lorne, which like for a second, it's funny because as an audience member, you're so used to Lorne being like with our team and doing whatever he wants. And he's so charismatic that you forget like, oh, right, he fully just looks like a demon. And so this is a reminder that when this librarian, who kind of looks like someone who at one point would have been my type, comes up to him and is like freaked out. And then very quickly she kind of gives him the excuse by being like, oh, you must be here for the children's reading program, which also, why would someone be in like a demon costume for a children's reading program? But then they ask this woman, like they describe the person that Cordelia saw in her vision and ask if that reminds her of anyone or if she works with anyone like that. But then when Cordelia says that she had an apple necklace, the woman's like, Fred wore one of those and looks a little bit haunted. And we find out that 5 years ago, there was a librarian who fits the description named Fred who disappeared when she was reading in the foreign language section.
Yeah, it was very like, I've come to return the sweater of the girl that I just went on a date with yesterday. And they're like, Mildred? Mildred's been dead for 40 years. Yeah, so Fred was studying to be a physicist and she fell into this portal, we presume. And so when they go over to the section where she disappeared from, Cordelia quickly finds the book that Fred was holding and she starts to read from it out loud. And you can tell that Lorne is like, oh no, please don't do that. You absolutely shouldn't do that. Cordelia opens up a portal and out pops Landok.
Landok, and Lorne sure knows who Landok is, because he's just like, Landok's, talking to Lorne like he knows him, and Lorne's just like, keep doing what you're doing, keep fighting him, to Angel and Wesley and Cordelia. And it's established that this is actually Lorne's cousin, and this is the scene where we find out Lorne's name is Lorne.
Yeah, so his real name is Crev Lorne Swath of the Deathwalk clan. He makes some comment about Lorne Green, and I had to look up who Lorne Green was, but he was a Canadian actor who was on Bonanza. He was on Battlestar Galactica, and he actually died from complications of pneumonia following ulcer surgery in 1987. And a non-fun fact is that we know that Andy Hallett died from complications of a dental infection. And so there was like a weird parallel there.
That's spooky.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like to hear that.
Yeah.
And then we learn basically that Lorne vanished as well from his own dimension when he traveled into this current dimension. But it seems a little bit more like either he chose to leave, or once he left, he never chose to try to get back, because it becomes clear that he does not really feel aligned with his culture. And here's the way that Lorne fits with this belonging theme, that he always kind of felt like an outsider. He didn't really agree. His culture is one of warriors who are, constantly fighting for justice, but in a way that he describes as being very kind of like black and white and no gray space. And which, of course, like he's presenting to Angel, like, you must not know what that's like. A place where it's just champions roaming around looking for justice, and no feelings are talked about, and no one talks about emotions. And Angel's like, yeah, no idea what that's like. But it does sound like his culture is different, in the sense that there's not art and there's not kind of this built-in complexity, and there's no music or things that obviously Lorne loves and thrives in. So it felt a little bit like the Lorne storyline had some like queer allegory.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I wrote queer allegory for like a queer kid who leaves a conservative home in the deep South and doesn't come back.
Absolutely. And then is also in some ways disowned, because it sounds like Lorne's mother, her version of grieving him, is really to like shame his memory by tearing up a picture into many little pieces, feeding those pieces to a pig, then killing the pig and feeding the pig to dogs.
Totally.
Then we check back in with Gunn, who seems to be piling up chairs to maybe create a fire, to maybe, I assumed it was to burn George's body in case he would turn. That was my interpretation of what they were doing. So Gunn is taking it out on Rondell, saying, you should have waited for me. And then Rondell, justifiably says, we've been waiting for you for months. Like implying like you've chosen this other life, and we can't just like wait for you to be available when it's convenient for you, when we're fighting for our lives and we're defending the people who actually are more vulnerable than the people you're protecting.
So something kind of fun about Landok is that he can sense these waves of hostility. And obviously what we know from Lorne is that he picks up on he has like this empathetic or empathic power where he can pick up on the way that people are feeling and then pick up on like what people's journeys are. So there's something kind of cool about the Deathwalk clan's powers in some way. And he mentions that Lorne would have been able to sense these waves if he would have trained. But Landok is using these powers to hunt. And he also mentions that the only way that you can kill a Draken demon is if you pierce it with a weapon that's dripped in thraumite. And he's, explaining all the intricacies of like how there's no way that they could probably kill this Draken. But the Draken is eating more people, and he is preying on this blonde woman who kind of looked like the actress. I mean, a lot of these like helpless blonde women kind of run together for me, but it kind of looked like the actress that was in the commercial earlier that day.
Yeah, and for a second, she kind of looked like Darla, and for a second, she kind of looked like Anne. It's interesting because juxtaposed against Landok feeling out the aura and trying to feel out where this demon would be, Cordelia is kind of feeling out her own waves, which is basically her intuition, whether you just want to call it human intuition or feminine, whichever. But she's, explaining that she feels like they're missing something, and it's not just a translation, they're missing something bigger. Then there's a moment where, again, Lorne flaunts his like the lady loving side of his bisexuality. And I know in the past, and I think for me, that past moment where I was like kind of critical of the writers of having him be kind of about Cordelia was because it was about Cordelia. But, I definitely didn't mean to imply in the past that he is not a bicon and that he could only be gay. I definitely think he could be a bicon. And it does seem like this moment suggests that he, while Landok was busy becoming a warrior, Lorne preferred to chat up the senoritas, letting in some love. Whatever that means, Lorne. Okay. Okay, Uncle Lorne. They drive to where Landok senses the demon, and they see him with the blonde in the alley. And again, there's this moment where Wesley, now his confidence is so shaken at this point that whereas like even an episode ago, he may have been able to lead with a plan, he now's kind of deferring to Angel. They're sort of hesitating on what to do. And then Angel and Landok end up taking off just after the demon without a plan.
Yeah, and the Draken and Landok get into it, and Landok really takes one for the team. He gets bitten, and apparently the Draken's bite has a venom that is deadly to Lorne's people. And so now Wes and Angel are kind of on their own with how to figure out how to kill this Draken demon, while also realizing that Landok could die if they don't get him back to his dimension.
And weirdly, Angel, when they're looking for the demon, starts going, "Here, kitty, kitty."
Yeah, that was weird. Wesley finds the woman and saves her until the Draken demon straight up like quarterback sacks Wesley on his back. Wes tries to fight against him, puts the road flare that he was holding in the Draken's mouth, while Angel then fights him.
And then Angel ends up killing the demon by shoving a sword through his neck, but I thought it had to be dipped in that special stuff. Is it just that Angel's so powerful that his force was enough?
Yeah, I think that's what it implied when Landok was like, you need it dipped in Thromite, or you need to have like huge strength to like get it all the way through. And I think that's what it was meant to imply, that like Angel can do anything.
Right, and it makes Landok a little bi for Boreanaz.
Yeah, of course.
He's got a broody stare and hot spiky hair. If you're straight or gay, your tingly feelings don't care. You're just being honest about this sexy demonic, and you're bi for Boreanaz. Bi for Boreanaz. Bi for Boreanaz.
Speaking of which, should we take a pause for flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing?
Hell yeah.
Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Stopwatch.
So I'm very curious, Brittany, what you meant by your pick being the actual opposite of the pig demon. So could you please elaborate?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to imply that I would be into violence and be into a beast and be into this like jacked, muscly demon, I'm frankly offended. And so what I was actually most impressed by was a quaint librarian who is also studying to be a physicist. She, obviously there is at this moment a bit of mystery surrounding her, but I chose Fred, and we stan an avid reader.
I'm into that. And honestly, this doesn't happen often these days, but there were a plethora of choices for me this episode.
Truly.
2 librarians that, both Fred and the one that they met. And also, as you know, and I know you share this affinity, I do have a soft spot for a long-haired man.
Yeah.
So, I for a second was leaning toward Landok. For a second, I was leaning toward Lorne. Because I really liked the speech he gave about the gray space and about art and music, and his choice to have like the character to leave when he recognized that his views didn't align with his family's. And Landok, I did find appealing. There was something about his ability to read the waves that I feel would maybe be
they would serve a purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just say for a one-time thing. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I was going to choose Landok, but now that you're choosing Fred, I think I'm going to choose the blonde librarian because I think that would be a pretty cute book club.
Yeah, I think that what started as physical would end up becoming a strong friendship.
Absolutely. And I just don't know that I can get behind like Landok's life philosophy enough, like even for a casual thing. So yeah, I'm going to go with librarian. And
I also couldn't see Landok as a reciprocator.
Oh, you're so right. He's definitely DJ Khaled in that respect.
Yeah.
Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Flirting, understanding, consent, and kissing. Watch.
They're running out of time because even though they killed the Draken demon, Landok is dying. And he is saying to Lorne, you know that I won't receive glory unless you perform the rituals, but of which Lorne we see is probably not going to want to perform these rituals, which there's also a parallel, kind of like this, the burning of George's body kind of felt like it could have been like ritualistic. Like this is maybe something they've had to do potentially before to prevent someone they love from turning into a vampire, that they have to burn their body. And it kind of serves as like both the purpose of not letting this person become a vampire, but also as like their funeral for them. But yeah, there was something about like ritual and death that had like some parallel meaning happening in both of these worlds. But Cordelia is like, no, I think I know how to get you back to the world so that you're not going to have to die here. I'm going to be able to get you back there. And so she believes that if she reads from this book and on stage at the karaoke bar, that is how the portal can send him back, because she believes that's how Fred opened the portal.
And so they bring Landok there, and he and Lorne say their goodbyes. Like they still have a basic kind of rapport and respect for each other, even though they see the world and their families and their cultures totally differently. And Lorne wishes him, safe travel. And Landok says, I feel we will meet again someday. And Lorne's like, I hope not. And then Landok starts reading the passage that Cordelia indicated, and it does open the portal, and it works. And Landok gets sent through the portal, and then basically Lorne is like, can we all forget this happened? And the guys agree. And then they're like, all right, how about you, Cordelia? Cordelia?
Yeah, Cordelia wakes up in her J-Lo jean jumpsuit in the woods of a different realm. Oh boy.
And then she's like, love don't cost a thing.
I'm still Cordy from the block.
I was just about ready to click next on that one.
Totally. Yeah. What a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Truly can't wait to see. How how she is going to navigate this.
Oh, I can't wait. Cordy in a different realm?
I could watch a show where every episode is just Cordy in a new realm.
Yeah. Cordy in the realms.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Angel on Top. I'm Laura Zach. You can find me on Instagram at Laura Zach or on Twitter at @la_wa.
And I'm Brittany Ashley, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Brit27Ash.
You can also follow Angel on Top on Instagram and Twitter at AngelOnTopCast. And you can email us at all one word, angelontoppodcast@gmail.com.
And now, please enjoy the poem for Belonging from Angel's perspective. Belonging. Expensive team outing, hope no one sees me. But let's get real. $19 for sashimi? Thought I saw an ancient shroud. I admit I got a little hasty. Turns out I caused a scene and was a terror to her safety. Checked on my food-poisoned comrade, then bathed in much-needed sunlight. When the director spouted misogyny, I booked the role as Cordy's White Knight. Can you believe Cordelia got angry with me? Why does this bother me so much? Nope, packing that answer away in a box in my mind's attic with the label "Don't Touch." Phew, a distraction, some kind of portal. Let's all put our minds on that theory. With some connection to the karaoke bar, off we head to the LA library. Eerily, the girl we're looking for has been missing for a 5-year span. We've got a visitor through the portal. Meet Landok of the Deathwalk clan. Lorne's not thrilled to see his cousin. Other than the green, not much in common. Sorry to fuel family drama flames, but Landok wants to help kill the Draken. The Draken's got a taste for blondes. How original, how one note. With Landok's sword at my ready, the entree's a blade through the throat. With the Draken dead and slain, we'll have Landok back home shortly. The portal opens just as planned. All we're missing is, Cordy?
Welcome to the small town of Chinook, where faith runs deep and secrets run deeper. In this new thriller, religion and crime collide when a gruesome murder rocks the isolated Montana community. Everyone is quick to point their fingers at a drug-addicted teenager, but local deputy Ruth Vogel isn't convinced. She suspects connections to a powerful religious group. Enter federal agent V.B. Laureau, who has been investigating a local church for possible criminal activity. The pair form an unlikely partnership to catch the killer, unearthing secrets that leave Ruth torn between her duty to the law, her religious convictions, and her very own family. But something more sinister than murder is afoot, and someone is watching Ruth.
Chinook, starring Kelly Marie Tran and Sanaa Lathan. Listen to Chinook wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you know what lies within nothing?
No.
Do you know where it ends? Do you want to know?
Yes. Counterbalance, a high fantasy audio drama. Season 2, coming 15th of October 2023. Learn more on trilunas.com.